What's good, y'all? Back again, another day. I got some bro talk for y'all, man. So, before we get started, let me just say I appreciate everybody that's been vibing with their bro talk, man. Enjoying the conversations. Um, like I said in one of the vlogs that I recorded recently, I've been reading a book called The Wild Heart, or let me see. Instead of guessing, I'm gonna show it to y'all. So I gotta make sure it's on point because I encourage everybody to check this book out. It's called Wild at Heart. Wild at Heart. I strongly suggest any man or any single mom that has a boy and wondering how they gonna make a man to let them read this book. Read this book to them. You know what I'm saying? And it's a really good book. But anyways, the reason I started these video series, of course, is to speak to my young brothers that, may not have a father figure in the household or whatever the case may be, like I did. Like I said, I always say, my father was involved, but he lived 4 hours away. So, I just want to make sure that I can help bridge that gap for anybody that needs it. So that's what we got going on here. Big blessings to everybody that's been supporting these conversations and they like this. Because the vlog is cool. I really enjoy the vlogs. That's more personal for me. And then the unboxings and the sneakers and all that stuff, that's for y'all, because that's what y'all like according to the algorithm. So I'm gonna drop those. But the bro talk, this is strictly for my fellas, you know what I'm saying? My young up and coming brothers, my sons. We gotta teach the men how to be men. And if we don't, then whoever's gonna teach him, and we ain't rocking with that. So on this one, I took notes. I want to talk about creating and maintaining credibility in today's society. So as black men, we have to go above and beyond, and we have to do more in order to be considered, I don't even know, to be considered in the room. We can't just be in the room. We have to be the sharpest in the room to be considered equal. Which, I know it sounds crazy, but, once you get there, you'll see. In order to be considered equal to your peers, you have to be better than your peers. And then, they won't treat you like you're equal. They'll treat you like you're equal even though you're above and beyond based off of the work that you do. Because they'll never let you know 100% how good you are, because that's intimidating. So what they'll do is they'll treat you, they'll let you in the room and they'll let you around. So anyway, here's some tips on how to create and maintain credibility. And this is not just for, anybody in corporate America. If you're an entrepreneur, then you need to be working on your credibility. And out here and venture out to say that if you're an entrepreneur, then you need to work on your credibility twice as hard, because you don't have anybody backing you. You don't have any cosigns. So your credentials, they have to be on point so that people can trust you. You know what I'm saying? So the first thing is patience and understanding that it's a process and it's gonna take time. A lot of us, we start making a lot of money fast, and we change our lives and our circumstances, and we want to rush and we want to do everything that everybody else is doing. And usually what happens is we end up stepping out into something that we haven't fully grown and developed, or we don't understand what we're doing. So for example, back in the day, as a lot of you know, I was wholesaling houses. Now, what I noticed a lot of people do once they get into wholesaling is they start coaching and teaching other people how to do that. Which, it sounds good, but then you're responsible for other people's success. And unless you really have a program laid out and you know how to create these things and you can guarantee your success, well, the success of others rather, then, if it doesn't work out, they're going to consider you a scammer. Which a scammer, as a black person, is probably the worst thing you can get on your name. Criminals make it, but scammers, people look at scammers funny. And the reason that a lot of people end up with that scammer label is not because they're bad people, but because they bite off more than they can chew. And why do they bite off more than they can chew? Because they weren't patient. You gotta trust the process. You gotta go through the steps, and it may take a little longer, but those steps help you build a foundation. And that foundation is what the house is built upon. So until you have that base level foundation, you can't build a house. It starts from the foundation. Then you build the frame. Then you close in the frame. then you put the roof on first, then you close in the frame. You put in your windows, your doors, boom, 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 and then you go from there. What a lot of people are doing is, instead of building that solid foundation, they want to go ahead on and build the frame and throw on the roof, throw on the doors, close in the house. And what happens is, when the wind blows, the house falls apart. Why? Because it doesn't have a solid foundation. So you got to be patient, you got to do the work, and you got to build that foundation. And then also, as you're building that foundation, what you want to do as well is work on your credentials. And I know it may sound crazy, and I know people say, oh, you don't have to worry about the white man's paperwork and blah, blah, blah. Listen, if you're an entrepreneur especially, you definitely need to have white man's paperwork. You got to have credentials, because again, yeah, you can do it for yourself, but can you manage somebody else's money? Or can you control somebody else's success? People will question your credibility, but if you have a credential that says, hey, I know how to do this because I'm certified to do this, that gives you extra footing. There's a lot of people out here that talk about finance, but they don't have that Series 7 license. So technically they can't really talk about finance, but they'll always say, this is not financial advice, even though they're giving you financial advice. If they had that Series 7, then they could legitimately give you financial advice. There's CPAs for a reason, so they can give you advice on how to manage your taxes and how to manage your accounting. Look at it this way. There's doctors that do things under the table, and then there's doctors that went to school and they got their credentials. Who would you prefer? Me personally, I prefer a doctor with credentials. I know about the medical system. I know about all of that. I'm fully aware about the Tuskegee experiments. You can't talk to me about it because I know 100%. I'm one of those. But at the same time, if something goes wrong, I'm going to the doctor. I'm going to look at other methods and I'm going to try X, Y, Z. But I'm going to go to the doctor. From there, if you want to get a second opinion or whatever the case may be, do what you got to do. But first, you need to go to a doctor. And I say that, bring it back on home. That's what the credentials do for you. They give you that, well, can I trust this person? Well, based on his credentials, I know that I can trust that he's been at least able to do X, Y, Z because he passed the test. When I was a teacher, I had to have my credentials before I graduated, before they put me in the classroom. Just another example. When I was an entrepreneur running a business, I didn't have credentials, which is why I went back to school to get my MBA. So that way when I was having these conversations, I could say, hey, I know business because I went and got my MBA. And it helped out a lot. It cut out a lot of unnecessary conversations of people wanting to know what gives me the right to say X, Y, Z or this or that. And then, I also feel like men should have credentials as well, but, that's for another day. Next up is professionalism. I can't stress enough how important professionalism is. You know what I'm saying? In professionalism, to keep it short and sweet, you want to focus on timeliness, always be on time or early. One of my favorite shows is The Wire. And the boy, what was his name? It wasn't Chris. It was, I haven't seen it in so long. But it was my guy. Anyways, one of the younger boys that was coming up in the series, he was going through training on how to be a hitman. And so Chris, who was one of the, I think it was Chris, who was one of the bigger hitmen, he told him that, you always want to arrive early. That way you can case out the scene, you can scope out, and you know what happens. So later on in the show, they tried to set up the young boy, whose name was Michael at the time. And so Michael arrived early, and because Michael got there early, listening and understanding that training, he knew what they were trying to do. They were trying to set him up, but because he was there early, he got the jump. Granted, none of us are probably ever going to be in that type of extreme situation, hopefully, but still, yeah, it doesn't hurt to be early, because when you get there early, or on time, if you're on time, that's a worst case scenario. You always want to be early. You never ever want to be late. Just being there early, it gives you a chance to prepare, get your mind right, start the day, and then it just sets a precedence to understand and show people that you're serious minded. So you always want to be early. Appearance, whatever the case may be, you want to have a standard appearance and you want to look a certain way, presentable, a button-up shirt or a collar shirt, depending on what you're doing. and some slacks or a suit. I mean, really, it depends on what field you're in. It's hard to say, but generally, you can't go wrong with a button up and slacks and some nice dress shoes. You know, you can get some loafers with no laces that you can slip in. You're good to go. Wherever you at, you know, you're good to go. I work in construction, as some of you may know, building houses, custom houses and whatnot. And I'm in the field a lot, but, you know, lately I've been in the office a lot more. And one of the ladies at work was like, you know, because one day I had on a t-shirt, some khakis, and some dirty sneakers. And the lady was like, you know, this is the first time I've ever seen you like this. I'm like, yeah, I know, because I'm out in the field today and I knew I was going to get dirty and I didn't want to get my clothes messed up. And she was like, you know, I'm just not used to seeing you this way. Now, mind you, I work in construction. I'm dirty every day, but I just knew I'd be a little extra more dirty than usual. So I toned it down a little bit, and she noticed. So things like that. When I was a teacher, you know, I was always in dress shirts, ties, slacks, or pants, or suits. You know, when I was, you know, whatever I do, I always try to keep a professional image because people judge you based on that. And even if you don't think they do, they do. So you always want to make sure that you're carrying yourself in a professional manner. And, you know, it starts with your timeliness. It starts with your appearance. And then here's a big one. No gossiping or talking too much. You know, you don't want to tell people your personal business like that. You know, granted, you give them just enough, but you don't need to tell them about what you do on the weekends and all this other stuff. They don't need to know that because people judge you based off of those things. Now, granted, if you're trying to build rapport, you definitely want to give information because a conversation is give and take. So if you take, and you don't give anything, then people are going to look at you funny because, you know, you're only taking information from them and you're not giving anything back. So, you know, you definitely want to talk, but people don't need to know everything about your personal life. They don't need to know all of your business. They don't need to know everything about you. And then also, you know, you don't want to treat people at the job like your friend. You know, you have to have that separation and people have to understand. You know, I'm not saying don't be cordial. I'm not saying don't talk to people. But, you know, there's a very fine line of being friendly and professional and doing too much, trying to build rapport. Because if you do too much, people will have information that they'll use against you later. So you definitely have to walk a fine line and make sure that you carry yourself in a professional manner. Watch what you say, watch who you talk to. Never ever gossip because it will always come back. Just, you know, keep a cool, even keel front. I say, you know, in the professional world, somebody you might want to look at if you watch Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul, Gus Fring. Perfect example of professionalism. Always in a shirt and tie, and I think Amir's waking up, so I'm gonna have to wrap it up soon. I gotta go get him. Professionalism, but yeah, check out Gus Fring from Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad. You know, prime example. And then, you know, granted he had a little bit of sociopathic tendencies, so, you know, don't go too far into Gus. But, you know, just the idea of carrying yourself a certain even-keeled, masculine way. Gus is that prime example. And then wrapping it up, the last two, you always want to make sure that you're consistent. If you say you're going to do something, do it, which leads into the last one, being dependable. The more people depend on you and the more people know that you're going to come through, the more responsibility that you get. And, you know, understand it's not always about the money. Now, granted, don't let people play you and take advantage of you because people will do that. So you have to know your worth. But at the same time, you know, you definitely have to outwork yourself in order to get what you want. And if you follow these, you'll quickly climb the corporate ladder. If you're an entrepreneur, you'll get into higher level circles of where you need to be. So, man, just follow these rules. If you have any questions, holler at me in the comments. I'll get back to you. I gotta go. Love you.